Hello everyone and welcome to our next lesson. Just a reminder that I originally developed this course for the BANGTAN Academy Discord community, so if you'd like to find out more, please follow them on Twitter at BANGTAN Academy _ so you can get access to other materials and make friends to study with. You can also find me on Twitter at writer_court or on thebtseffect.com. Hello everyone and welcome to Learn Korean with BTS Book 3. This is the first chapter in Book 3, so we're on Chapter 13 now. This starts on page 18, so go ahead and listen to these different clothing words with your language pen, and I will read them aloud in this lecture, but definitely go back with your pen afterwards. So the first three at the top, we have 바지, it's our pants. I think the pen translates that as trousers, so trousers or pants, either one. Then we have jacket for jacket. And then t-shirt for t-shirt. And then below that are some more clothing items that aren't part of that exercise at the very top. So these clothing items are 셔츠, which is just shirt. So we can see that's, the same thing as t-shirt, except just without the T at the front. So that does distinguish between more like, a button-up shirt or a blouse kind of shirt versus just a regular t-shirt. And then we have 코트, which is a coat. So you can see from the picture, like the coat and the jacket are a little bit different. So we might not always distinguish the same way in English. But, using these pictures, hopefully you get a better idea of what type of word, for jacket. In English, we would call some of the, several of these things a jacket or a coat. So it's a little bit different in English, but going by the picture, hopefully it makes more sense. So then we have jumper, which again looks kind of like a jacket in English. To me, it looks like they're showing you the difference between kind of a casual jacket as a jumper and a coat more formal, and then a jacket more like almost like a suit jacket. So that's one way to distinguish between them. Next we have one piece. So it's like one piece, but it's really just referring to a dress. And then next is 청바지. So blue jeans or just jeans. The next row, 운동화 for sneakers. Next we have 구두. So this is just translated on the language pen as shoes. I remember learning it as dress shoes or high heels. Next we have 목걸이, which is necklace. And then 귀걸이, which is earring. And then 반지, which is ring. Moving on to page 20 and 21, we have our first key expression with 아, 어, 보다. So remember that 아, is for conjugation, so depending upon what vowel the verb has is which one you're going to use. So 아 or 어. Remember, is for bright vowels, so that's or o, the longer o sound. And then is going to be for all the other vowel sounds. So we have our first little conversation over here on page 20. The first person says, 한복을 입어봤어요? 한복을 입어봤어요? Which means, have you ever tried on a hanbok? Of course, hanbok is traditional Korean dress. The second person answers, 아니요, 한번 입어보고 싶어요. Which means, no, I would like to try trying it on once. That's like a very direct translation, so we wouldn't really translate it like that in context, and you really shouldn't think about it like that in your mind either. I'm just telling you that's the direct translation so that we can break this sentence down a little bit, because I know the language pen actually just translates that second line as not yet, I'd like to. So that is what it means in context, but I don't think you're getting the full picture by that translation. So 아니요 for no, 한번 means once, and then we have this last part of the sentence all kind of goes together. So 입어보고 싶어요. I would like to try trying it on, which again, we wouldn't really say that in English. You would just say, I would like to try it on. So that first part, 입어 is from 입다 for to wear, and then 보고 싶어요 is from this 아, 어, 보다 form. So we are conjugating this verb to indicate that you want to from 싶다, so want to try something, and trying something is indicated with 아, 어, 보다. So you could say in the second sentence that just, 입고 싶어요 for our go 싶다 conjugation to say I want to try it on. But this one adds a little more nuance saying, maybe because you've never tried it on before, this is not an experience that you've had before, but you want to have the experience. So you want to try this experience, which happens to be trying on a piece of clothing. I hope that makes sense. So it's a little bit more nuanced. You could technically say either, but this one, again, just a little more advanced, a little more nuanced. So this conjugation is used for action verbs. It's used to express experience or having tried something or wanting to try something if you combine it with shipta, like we just saw. So number two here, I've written a o 봤다, which is for past experiences. So if you look at sentence A again, 입어봤어요, they're asking, have you ever had the experience of whatever the action is? And in this case, the action is 입다, to wear something. So they're asking, have you ever experienced this thing? So that's why it's in past tense there. But we can also use this o 보다 format to suggest someone to try something. So that's what this o poseo is. So that's like saying, please try this or consider trying this thing. You can make that as a suggestion to someone if they've never done something before. And so that's what this set phrase is very common, this 한번 blank o poseo. So you don't have to use 한번 unless it's relevant. You could leave that out. But this o poseo is like suggesting someone try something. So we're seeing that we can use this in past tense, but we can also use it in this present tense, like command form or request form, rather. You're like suggesting, requesting that someone try this thing. And of course, seo is more formal. You can use this in like panma, for example. You just wouldn't say poseo. You would just have to conjugate it differently. You could just say like iboba, like try this on. But that poseo format is what they're showing you in the book, so that's why that's here. So for number three here, I have written it out exactly as it shows up in the book, and this point is about how poda does not get paired with a o poda, because basically my assumption is that this, poda is the same verb from a o poda, so it's basically duplicating the verb. So basically the book is telling you for 보다, you just use 봤어요, not 봐봤어요. And the same thing for 보세요, it's just 보세요, not 봐보세요. This section also notes that you can use this in 반말. So 이거 먹어봐 and 여기 봐봐. So those are in this book said to be correct. And the first example of 봤어요 or 봐보세요, those two are not correct. However, when I first taught this book, we figured out during the course of that class that this is actually not correct. So the book is telling you that this poda cannot be used with this form that we're learning, but it actually can be. So I don't know why. I don't know why they're telling you that you can't use this form when you actually can. And it's not the only book to do this, and so I'm wondering if this is just an old form of language that has since died out and no one adheres to that rule anymore. So just ignore this part in the book. You can actually say 봐 봤어요 and 봐 보세요. So you can use 아오 보다 with 보다 as a verb for to see or look. So I know that's confusing, but I just wanted to point that out that that is actually incorrect in the book. You can use it for this yo form in past tense, as well as the command or request form, as well as panmal. So they did say you could use it for panmal. That part is right, but that number one there on the slide, that part is wrong. So again, that's copied directly from the book, but that is incorrect. We even found like an official Twitter for Korean language or something that had an explanation of yes, this is fine. So, and I've seen people write this, so we're gonna go with it's fine. I don't know what the book was doing here. So now we're going to look a little bit more at conjugations. So the first one, 살다, for to live. We take off 다 and just add the a because this is a bright vowel, it's a, so we're going to add the other a. So we get 살아봤어요. 살아봤어요, which would be to have the experience living somewhere. So in the example sentence, we get 저는 외국에서 살아봤어요, which means I have lived abroad before in the past. I have the experience of living abroad, that sort of meaning. Now for 먹다, so that's not a bright vowel, that's a dark vowel. So it's going to get the 어. So we're going to just take off 다, add 어, and then conjugate 보다 for 먹어봤어요. To have the experience of eating something or to have tried eating something. The example sentence is 전에 비빔밥을 먹어봤어? So this is, of course, a little bit more casual because we've dropped the yo. So this is saying, have you tried bibimbap before? So 전에, just before, in general before. 비빔밥을 먹어봤어? Have you tried eating bibimbap before? And then for 하다 verbs, it's always going to be the same. So the example is 연락하다 for to contact, and we get 연락해 보세요. So just take off 다, conjugate 하 to 해, and then conjugate 보다 to whatever format you need it in. So here they're making a suggestion of 연락해 보세요, which means please try contacting. So you're making a suggestion that someone contacts someone else. And the example sentence is 니콜에게 한번 연락해 보세요. So please try contacting Nicole once. That once is in there, but again, that's not really something you have to translate to English. That's just a common format in Korean with 한번 blank 보세요. So 니콜에게 to Nicole, try contacting her once. And then we have some irregular verbs. So the first one is a digit irregular verb for 듣다. So for this form, you're going to change the digit to 리을. So we get 들. And because this is not a or o, we're going to add a. So we get 들어. And then we conjugate 보다. So 들어봤어요. To have the experience of hearing or listening to something. Below that, we have 쓰다, which is to write. It can also mean to use. It can be used in several different contexts, but I think in this chapter they're focusing on to write. So 쓰다, this is an irregular verb. So you take off the ta, of course, and then you also take off You're just left with that double shiut. So it has no vowel, but originally it was an so we're just going to add for 서 봤어요. So 쓰다 becomes 서 봤어요. And then next we have 르, irregular verbs. They've given us two. We have 거르다 and 부르다. So 거르다 is to select or choose something. 부르다 is to call or sing. So the difference that they're illustrating here is that one has a bright vowel and one has a dark vowel. If you're not looking at 르, because 르 is the irregular part. So if you're just looking at 코 and 푸, that 코 is the bright vowel and the 푸 is the dark vowel. So that's going to change whether you add a or 어 when you're conjugating this a 어 보다 format. So for 고르다, because it's irregular, we're going to change the 르. And what happens there is basically you're dropping the and you're adding the rio to that first syllable, the end of that first syllable, as well as keeping it in the second syllable. So I know that sounds confusing, but if you look at the conjugation, we end up with 콜라. So that 콜, that's where the rio goes to that first syllable. It also stays in the second syllable because o is a bright vowel, we add a. So that's how we get 콜라. So 골라보세요, which means please choose something or please select something. Same thing in the next one. You're going to take off the and you're going to add rio to the bottom of 푸 and leave it in that second block as well. Because this is a dark vowel, we're going to add 어. So we end up with 불러. So 불러보세요. Please try calling or please try singing depending upon the context. Moving on to page 22 and 23, we have our second key expression, which is 으면. So the first sentence in the conversation is 이 한복 어때요? So how is this hanbok? In context, she's talking about like she's holding up a hanbok saying, for herself, how is this one? And she's asking the opinion of someone else. And that person who's working at that shop is saying, 마음에 들면 입어보세요. So this is actually combining both key expressions from this chapter. So we have 입어보세요, which is, of course, making the suggestion to try something. So that's why we have 입어 conjugated like that. And the first part we've learned before as 마음에 들다 in unconjugated format is just 마음에 들다. Literally means to like enter into your heart, but in context means to like something or to favor something. It pleases you, all those sorts of things. So this conjugation is basically saying if something, then something else. It can also sometimes be used to say when something, then something else. So it's used to determine the condition or assumption of the following clause. So that's a little confusing. I took that language directly from the textbook. But what that basically means is that the first part of the sentence, that condition has to be met for the second part of the sentence to happen. So they're saying 마음에 들면 if you like this, 입어보세요. Then try it on. So the context there is that, if you don't like it, you probably aren't going to bother trying it on. So it's saying if you like it, then try it on. So that second part, 입어보세요, depends upon 마음에 들면. This can also be used for nouns. So if the noun ends in a consonant, you can use 이면, and if it ends in a vowel, you just attach 면. So now let's look at some conjugations. These conjugations are somewhat easier, I think. So you're going to put 으면 if it ends in a consonant, if the verb stem ends in a consonant, and you're going to use 면 if it ends in a vowel. Of course, we have irregular verbs that change that somewhat, but for basic verbs that aren't irregular, it's super simple. So we have 먹다, take off 다, it ends in a consonant, so we add 으면 for 먹으면. The example sentence, 저는 케이크를 먹으면 기분이 좋아요, which means if I eat cake, then I'm happy. So 기분이 좋아요 is like saying I'm happy or I feel good or something positive like that. So again, that 기분이 좋아요 depends upon that first clause, which is 케이크를 먹으면. So if I eat cake or when I eat cake, then I'm happy, I feel good, things like that. The next verb is 아프다, which is descriptive verb, so this can be used for descriptive verbs as well. It ends in a vowel when you take off 다, so we just add 면 for 아프면. The example sentence, 머리가 아프면 조금 쉬어. So this 머리가 아프면, if your head hurts, or when your head hurts, 조금 쉬어, which means to rest a little. So this is in 반말, so 머리가 아프면 조금 쉬어. The next one is an irregular verb, so this is from like 마음에 들다. So 들다, you take off 다, it ends in a 리을. You just add 면. You don't add 으면. So we end up with 들면. The example sentence, 이 옷이 마음에 들면 입어보세요, which is like our conversation example. So it's saying, if you like this clothing, try it on. The next irregular verb is digit irregular verb for 듣다. So here you take off 다, the digit changes to 리을, and then you do add 으면. So we end up with 들으면. Then we have a 비읍 irregular verb for 춥다, for to be cold. Take off 다, the 비읍 changes to 우, and we end up with 추우면. So take off 다, 비읍 changes to 우, so we get 추, and then add 면, 추우면. The next two are just 이다, so this is 방학이다, which is, 방학 is like school vacation. I think it can also be used just in general for vacation, but I've really only heard it used for school break vacation. So 방학, and then 휴가. 휴ga is also like vacation, holiday in general. So 방학 ends in a consonant, 휴가 ends in a vowel. So 방학 is going to take 이면 and 휴가 takes 면. Now on page 24, we have the full conversation. So first person says, 한복을 입어봤어요? Have you ever worn a hanbok? Second person answers, 아니요, 한번 입어보고 싶어요. No, I'd like to try wearing one once. Basically, I'd like to try one on. And then the first person answers, 저도요. Me too. 저기 한복 대여점이 있어요. Which means over there is a hanbok rental shop, which are pretty common, especially around historical sites in Korea. You can rent one to try it on, and then you can wear it to the historical site or just anywhere else that you want to. So rental shop, 대여점. And then the second person responds, 예쁜 한복이 많아요, which means there are many pretty hanboks. And then she says, 들어가 볼까요? So should we go in? So she's making a suggestion there, asking, should we do this? We've already learned 을까요 form. 들어가 볼까요? Should we try going in? So this is actually a combination of what we learned before with 을까요 and 보다. So we're conjugating this 들어가다 is the dictionary form. So 들어가다, we just get 들어가, and then 볼까요 for should we try doing this? So 들어가 볼까요? Should we try going in to this store? So then they go into the rental shop and one of the girls says, "이 한복 어때요?" How is this hanbok? The shop worker says, "마음에 들면 입어보세요." If you like it, please try it on. And then she says, 어때요? 잘 어울려요. So that's a word I don't think we've come into contact with until this chapter. So 어울리다 is dictionary format. And it basically means, does this suit me? Does this go well? So to suit something, to go well with something, to look good with something, that's what that word means. So she's saying, how is it? Does it look good? Like on me, is the context. And the shop owner or shop worker person answers, 정말 예뻐요. It's very pretty. 이 신발도 신어보세요. Which means she's suggesting with that 어 보다 format, please try these shoes on too. So 신발 for shoes, 볼도 means also or too. 신다 is the dictionary format. We're conjugating it into 신어 and then 보세요. So please try these shoes on too, or really please wear these shoes too. So as we will see in a second, there are different verbs for different types of clothing. So that's why it's not 입다, it's 신다. So we'll get into that in a second. But just know that that verb goes with 신발. So I'll read through that one more time. 한복을 입어봤어요? 아니요, 한번 입어보고 싶어요. 저도요. 저기 한복 대여점이 있어요. 예쁜 한복이 많아요. 들어가 볼까요? 이 한복 어때요? 마음에 들면 입어보세요. 어때요? 잘 어울려요? 정말 예뻐요. 이 신발도 신어보세요. So, like I mentioned, there are verbs for wearing clothes that differ between clothing because it just needs to be extra confusing, I guess. I don't know. So it's kind of like counters for nouns. They get pretty confusing sometimes if you're not sure, what type of verb, which verb to use with what type of clothing. So I wouldn't worry about memorizing all of that right now. Just memorize some very basic ones to start with. And then later on, you can always add more. So we've already learned 입다 for to wear. So that's just general 입다 for 옷, so clothes. So 옷을 입다, those go together. You can also use 입다 for things like shirts and pants. And then we have 모자를 쓰다. So that's to wear a hat. 안경을 쓰다, to wear glasses. And then shoes, 신발을 신다. And then we have these three at the bottom, 옷을 벗다, 모자를 벗다, 신발을 벗다. Basically, what they're illustrating there is that the verb 벗다 is to take off or remove. That can be applied to any of these, but the verb for wearing them is different. Now on page 25, there is another conversation. This is part of your pronunciation listening exercises, but like usual, I'm just going to go ahead and read through it here. So the first person says, 혜설아, 나 입고 싶은 옷이 있어. 그런데 이름을 몰라. So 혜설, they're just calling out to their friend. 나 입고 싶은 옷이 있어. So this is, of course, 반말, and they're saying there is a piece of clothing that I want to wear, and then they're saying, but I don't know the name. So 혜설 answers and says, 그래요? 사진 있어요? Oh, really? Do you have a photo? So he shows a photo and says, 여기 있어. 아침에 한옥 마을에서 봤어요. So here it is, the photo. He's showing a photo of someone wearing a hanbok. So he's saying, in the morning or this morning at Hanok Maul, I saw this. So Hanok is, of course, this traditional Korean housing. Maul is village. So it's a traditional Korean village where there's a lot of like old houses. So he's saying he saw people wearing hanbok at this Hanok Maul. And then 해설 answers, 아, 이거 한복이에요. 한국 전통 옷이에요. So, oh, this is hanbok. This is Korean traditional clothing. So, 한국 전통 옷이 is Korean traditional clothing. So I can't remember if they showed pictures of the 한옥마을 type thing in the books before. So these are some photos I dug up on my computer. I took these at one of the 한옥마을's in Seoul. So there are some in Seoul. They're super easy to get to. Basically, it's these old traditional houses with very narrow streets, and you can kind of go up to the top of some of them because there are tourist spots there, and you can just see all the tops like this, and you can see, of course, the modern Seoul skyline in the background and even Namsan Tower. But yeah, this one's in Seoul, so you can go to these places and walk around and see the really old villages. I think this one is Bukchonmal, which I think was built sometime in the Joseon dynasty, so it's pretty old. And yeah, you can go around and walk through these. You know, you can find the hanbok rental shops nearby. You can wear hanbok through these. You can also wear hanbok at palaces, the old palaces, and if you wear that to the old palace, you actually get in for free. So yeah, this is just an activity you can do if you're in Korea, and it's super easy to get to if you're in Seoul. So it's definitely something worth looking into. But yeah, that's it for this chapter, and I will see you in the next one.